Good morning and welcome to this week's pet pairing. As usual, I've already applied my eyeshadow primer and my brows, and we're going to continue with the rest. Speaking of the rest, I'm going to apply my under eye lightening serum as usual, and look what I dug out of the archives when I was rearranging my makeup. This is a little sample of the Becca backlight priming filter. Does anyone remember that? This was all the rage in, like, I want to say 2016. I have smelled it, it's still fine, so I'm actually going to use it as a substitute for my Glow Lost by Auric, because actually it has quite a similar, consistency, and I feel like it delivers a similar effect on the skin. I actually had a full size of this circa 2016, and I want to say I went through the whole thing, and this was in my travel makeup kit, it was something that I took traveling with me so that I don't have to drag the full size. Pretty funny, the type of things that you dig out of the back hidden parts of your drawers when you rearrange your makeup. I don't really have much of that going on. It's not like I'm going to dig out a bunch of treasures out of there, but this one was one of the more interesting ones, together with this one, which I now apply a little bit, like the tiniest bit of that here on my cheeks where my pores are the largest, but like really the tiniest bit, because I noticed that even now if I over apply it, my foundation starts to slip there. So I'm just going to apply a few dots here to sort of fill up my pores, because this is extremely silicone rich. For my concealer today, I'm going to grab the Bendy Avocado Concealer from First Aid Beauty. I've been watching a ton of shows recently. Sometimes I go through phases when I don't really feel like watching anything. I don't have the patience for following anything, or I'm not in the mood for a certain show. But lately I have just been like binge. And I have actually watched a couple of like really cool shows that I think we can talk about a little bit. Oh, by the way, just to finish off a little bit on that backlight priming filter, I think just like the strobe cream from MAC, this is very nice and illuminating, but it doesn't have the one thing that I like so much about the one from Auric. Well, actually, two things that I like so much about the one from Auric. First of all, Auric has a lot of skincare ingredients, and second of all, the one from Auric actually has a little bit of coverage to it. So there you have it. So, the first show that I binge watched recently was Only Murders in the Building, which is now on Disney Plus. And I had heard a lot about the show, and it seemed like an interesting, show to watch, because it stars Selena Gomez, Steve Martin, and Martin Short. Quite an unusual combination if you think about it, and I had heard really good things about the show, but I will be honest with you, I just didn't really know what to expect with that title, and I went in completely blindly, and I really enjoyed it. It's just such a fun show. There are also cameos from Tina Fey. I love Tina Fey. It was just a really fun and different kind of show to watch, and I really enjoyed myself. And I also got the chance to actually see Selena Gomez perform in anything, because actually I think I'm maybe a little bit too old to have been in the generation that knows Selena Gomez. At least I didn't really grow up with her, to be quite honest with you. So I didn't really know much about her past, her internet fame and her relationship with Justin Bieber, which was highly, publicized. I didn't really know much about her rather than gossipy type of news, and I didn't really know what to expect. And I've really been, also curious about her makeup brand, because Rare Beauty seems to be doing really well among pretty much everyone. Unfortunately, we don't really have a Rare Beauty around here just yet. There was talk at some point that Zalando here will be picking up a lot of Sephora brands, including Rare Beauty, but I have not really seen that happen yet. But anyway, we're talking about Selena Gomez. So I watched the show, and I'll be honest with you, Steve Martin and Martin Short really do steal the show a little bit, especially Martin Short. He's just so incredibly hilarious. And you can see that she's starring next to, comedic giants. While I really enjoyed the show, I don't know that I enjoyed it specifically for her performance, and I didn't really feel very convinced that she is a great actress. She seems perfectly, cute and adorable, and she's very pretty. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But it's like if they put you next to a supermodel and you're a regular pretty person, then you don't really stand out as much as you would stand out if you were, you know, in a crowd of regular people. I don't know whether they told her to act like that to fit the character in the show, but she was basically giving me typical Gen Z broody vibes, you know? So I can say that so far I've been like very convinced of her talent as an actress. And like I said, because I grew up, I'm going to bronze by the way now with my Too Faced. What is this? The Unicorn Tears bronzer. And because I didn't really grow up with her music either, the only song that I know from her is Love You Like a Love Song, because it was on Glee. But I'm really curious what you guys think about her as a performer, and what did you think about Only Murders in the Building. I'm not going to like spoil the show, because you should go and watch it if you haven't seen it, but honestly it's just really, really fun to watch. It's light, it's the episodes are quite short, they're only like 30-ish minutes or so per episode, and the show has a relatively like good pace, because basically the three of them are like solving crimes, and the whole premise of the show is that they're solving murders that were committed only in their building. So, you know, a fun little show. 2 seasons have already been out. A 3rd season is coming now with Paul Rudd as a guest star, and Paul Rudd is hilarious, so I can't wait for season 3, although I think that's going to be a while. Okay, for blush I'm going to take Nude Venus. I'm sorry, you're probably really tired of seeing this blush at this point on my channel, but today I have a really long day, because after work I'm going to have a pizza date with one of my friends from work, and I need a blush that is going to stay all day long, and I know that my Pat McGrath blushes are never going to fail me. Now, another show that I watched, also on Disney Plus by the way, but I think we really like need to go a bit more in depth into, because it is based on a true story, is The Dropout. Oh my gosh, you guys, I don't know under what stone I have lived, but I had literally never ever heard of the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. And if you are like me and you lived under a stone and you have no idea what I'm talking about, so this show, The Dropout, is based on the real story of Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes is played by Amanda Seyfried in the show, and may I say Amanda did an absolutely magnificent job in the show. She's amazing. And what's also interesting about the show is that literally it is playing out right now. Elizabeth Holmes is awaiting her final sentence as we speak. It is going to be, I think, announced sometime in September. But basically, she is this young woman who started a company in Silicon Valley. She dropped out of college, that's why it's called The Dropout. She dropped out of college, Stanford of all places, in order to start her own company, because she had this idea that she never actually made reality, to create a machine which can conduct a variety of blood tests, like diagnostic blood tests, only with a few drops of blood. For highlighter I'm taking Divine Rose. Okay, she had this idea. She never technically was able to make it true, but she got on board as her investors some of the most powerful old white men in America. She got them to believe her, and she strung them on a line as her puppies, who believe her unconditionally for, I want to say, over a decade. It took over a decade for truth to come out, and what's even more interesting about the story is that one of her investors was a man that I had also never heard of before, someone named George Schultz, who apparently was a really big deal in the government during the Cold War, and he mediated, you know, very important political negotiations between the US and Russia. And his grandson went to work for her, and his grandson was a biology major, so he went to the R&D department, and very quickly he figured out that they were massaging data over there, that they were not actually using the machines that they claimed to have made, but they were using old technology in order to perform those blood tests. They were not actually doing it on drops of blood, but they were drawing like blood from the veins, so much larger amounts, which was, you know, the shtick was, we don't have to take this much blood, and they actually were. Not to mention that they were performing, you know, these blood tests on terminally ill cancer patients. When he tried to go talk to his grandfather in order to tell him what is going on, his grandfather didn't believe him, and the company went after him, and his parents paid, like, had to sell their house and pay over $500,000 in legal fees. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? I was like, okay, the second he blows the whistle on her with his grandfather, they're going to go after her. No. His grandfather, they did like sort of repair the relationship from what I understand in later years. And the grandfather said that he was very proud of his grandson. His name is Tyler Schultz, by the way, but he never admitted to being wrong. Before we get into the rest of the look though, I am going to be pulling out my statuesque single here. First of all, have you guys heard about this story? Have you been following it? After I watched the TV show, I went and watched a documentary about this woman. And yeah, there's like so many like really interesting things about her, and personally I think she's a psychopath. She is definitely someone who's not stupid. She's a very smart girl. She was also like always like very much a bookworm, sometimes who was not really interested in partying, and she really had like an academic type of thinking. But when she was asked what her dream is, she said that she wanted to invent something and become a billionaire, and she was very much inspired by, you know, the giants in Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, Elon Musk, you know, the whole crowd there. And there were several like very interesting aspects about this show. First of all, Silicon Valley is it's a bonkers place. It's a place that seems so detached from reality, that is full of like crazy delusional people. And it's very funny because we had just finished watching the TV show Silicon Valley, which takes like a more humorous take on commenting on what's going on in Silicon Valley, and the Dropout took like the more serious path, because it is also a much more, you know, it's a true story. It's someone who eventually got convicted. Okay, now we're going to the more interesting part of the look. I'm going to take one of my absolute favorite purples ever, and this is the shade Purple Rain here, which I have in my La Vie and Rose palette, and I think actually this only exists in La Vie and Rose and as a single. And of course, another interesting aspect of the show is how pressured she felt to masculinize herself in order to be taken seriously by, you know, all the men on her board. So she explicitly made her voice over the course of time like be deeper and deeper and deeper, so that people take her more seriously. She eventually started, you know, wearing the black suits and the turtlenecks, very much inspired by Steve Jobs. So it was that was also very interesting, and obviously a beautiful, you know, young charismatic woman who convinced a bunch of old white men to invest in her company is surprising, but at the same time not so surprising, because she basically attracted a lot of people on her board who knew shit about science. They didn't know anything about what was going on in the Theranos labs. Her company was called Theranos because it was a combination of therapy and diagnostics. And the most striking aspect of the show for me, as someone, you know, who comes from scientific background, is the fact that there were an alarming amount of people who worked in her R&D department who were well aware of the fact that her technology basically doesn't exist. It's a pipe dream. It is a great idea, and FYI, just to open like a little side note here, not one that is new. Like, she kept saying, and people kept saying, that she's a genius because she came up with this new and original idea, and I was like, no, her idea is not new or original. I'm sure that bigger companies who were already making these types of machines, you know, for doing diagnostics from blood, have had the idea of like, hey, can we miniaturize this? But other people and other companies have had this idea. It's just that the technology wasn't there. And I'm sure that if she had invented the actual technology, we could easily call her a genius. But from where I'm standing, it would be the equivalent of me saying, I had this brilliant idea. How about we design a drug which tells cancer cells specifically to commit apoptosis. Apoptosis is like, they basically off themselves. It's a little program in your cell that is executed when the cell needs to basically commit suicide. That idea has pretty much crossed the mind of like every other person who does cancer research, but it's not feasible. Right now, it is not feasible. It is a dream very, very far away from in the future. So I'm not a genius for having this idea. I would be a genius if I could execute it successfully. but like she sold herself so well and the idea so well, and the fact that she was actually close to pulling off the idea, that people believed it and they called her a genius. She was worth billions. She was worth billions one day and then zero the next day. There are like so many interesting things about the show. Also her very interesting relationship with her partner in crime, a man called Sunny Balvani, who I think was just deeply in love with her. He knew that she was a sham, but he was deeply in love with her. Oh, and I never finished talking about what I was talking about before I sidetracked. That people who were working in her R&D departments, all the researchers and the scientists, were well aware of the fact that her technology is shit and doesn't do anything. But they didn't say anything. And I was wondering, for all of you who maybe understand laws and laws in the US specifically better, are NDAs so powerful that they would let you harm people before exposing someone's like trade secrets? Just out of sheer curiosity, like what were all of these people thinking when they were sending out inaccurate results to patients or massaging data? And it's true that everyone who stood in her way in that way she got rid of, and she surrounded herself with yes-sayers. But it's just very surprising to me to this day that a lot of people, she had like 800 people in employment, and a lot of them were probably people in the R&D. How did not a bunch of them come forward, like go to the, you know, appropriate administrations? I have no idea what these agencies would be called in the US, by the way, but like how did not a bunch of them come forward and say this? Why did it take two people? Because it was literally two people, the Tyler Schultz guy and another girl who worked at the lab, and they had it really difficult, you guys. After they tried to blow the whistle on her, she sent people to stalk them. She was threatening them all the time with like lawsuits. They were super stressed out. Anyway, let's take a break from this extremely exciting but also very disturbing story to put a little bit of NYX glitter glue on my lids so that we can do the most fun part of this video, which is going to be today's pairing, which a lot of you probably would have guessed right by now. What am I going to put over top of this glorious purple? Let me know in the comments before I show it now in a few seconds. What do you think I'm going to put over top of this purple? Let's see if you guessed it right. I am going to pull out my Moonlit Seduction, and we're going to take, of course, we're going to take this shade, VR Sextasy, because I'm dying to have that beautiful greenish duochrome, but then over a purple base, rather than the like more magenta maroon base that it originally comes from. I'm just like generously applying that all over that purple. Ooh, that is so pretty. I don't know if it's coming across on camera. I hope it is, and if it's not, just try it at home. You will really, really like this look. Okay, that is so flipping pretty. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is go back into the Moonlit Seduction palette, and I'm going to take Blitz. I want to say it's called Venus, to apply that into my inner corners, because I think it fits the look really, really nicely. Anyway, I had a lot of like really jumbled thoughts about the Dropout, but I think it is an absolutely fascinating story, and one that reflects everything that is wrong with modern society, with Silicon Valley specifically, the craze there to, you know, be the first one, the most successful one. I don't know. There is a certain type of culture there that is extremely, extremely wrong and extremely toxic, and it's breeding anything but good people. I feel like it takes people who are, you know, maybe started off as somewhat more ambitious and more egocentric, and it spit out full-blown psychopaths. I don't think she had an ounce of remorse for misleading so many people, like so many patients with faulty blood test results and all of that, or the fact that she could have killed someone. One of her employees, actually someone that she would have considered a really good friend of hers, killed themselves on account of how stressed he was, knowing the truth that her technology doesn't work, and her like blatantly lying to everyone around her. And I don't even know if it was lying, to be honest with you. I feel like at some point she had convinced herself that it's all true and she just refused to see the truth. I think that at some point she wasn't even like explicitly lying, she just refused to see the truth. Anyway, I'm taking a little bit of intensifies here to pop on my lower lash line, because like I said, we're going for a very long lasting makeup today, before I apply Purple Rain again also on my lower lashes. That is basically going to be all for this look, and all of these like random chats about the 2 Disney Plus shows that I watched. And in our next episode we can talk about The Crown, which I'm currently binge watching. This is quite a smoky eye. I finished it off with an absolute cult classic in my collection. This is the shade Ravenswood from Urban Decay. A really comfortable, like more pink leaning nude, so I think it fits the look really nicely, and it's going to be really comfortable on my lips for the rest of the day. So I think I'm going to leave it at this. It was a very rambly, very all over the place video, I guess, but you know, when you're just turning on your camera and just chatting whatever comes to your mind without really any prior agenda, sometimes things come out very rambly and very chaotic. Hopefully you didn't mind that. I would love to hear whether you were aware of the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos prior to watching The Dropout, or were you like me and you had absolutely never heard of her story and you were absolutely fascinated by it. If you have watched The Dropout, and if you haven't, please go ahead and watch it, or at least watch the documentary on HBO, because I think this story is absolutely fascinating. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and the look. Do let me know what you thought about the look. I really like it. Is it quite dark and dramatic? It is. I can't even see my lashes anymore, but I think the combination of these 2 colors is just really, really pretty. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!